want to be the best possible leader you can be? Do you want to be the leader your team truly deserves? Then you are in the right place. In this podcast, we share deeply personal stories of how successful leaders are powered by their purpose and anchored in their authenticity, how they connect who they are to how they lead and translate their purpose into everyday actions in good times and bad, at crossroads and crises, how they challenge status quo and existing paradigms and do different things differently. Mindful leadership is the greatest unlock for the future of work. Join us in reimagining the leadership of the future with me, your host, Shahana Banerjee, CEO of Just Human, on a mission to humanize the future of work. The journey to being the best leader you can possibly be starts with becoming coachable. In this episode, we dive into a mega dose of inspiration on this life-changing topic with Scott Osman, founder and CEO 100 Coaches Agency, and Jacquelyn Lane, president of the 100 Coaches Agency, and authors of the book Becoming Coachable, along with Marshall Goldsmith. Jacquelyn and Scott, welcome. It is such an honor and a privilege to have you both on our podcast today.
Thank you for having us. So happy to be here.
So great to be here.
There's actually so much synergy in our work between becoming coachable and between mindful leadership. Mindful leadership, we talk about it as connecting who we are to how we lead, to translating our purpose into everyday actions that help our people and our organization and businesses thrive. And becoming coachable is really the foundational principle in so many ways, right? And it's almost the first step. Often, your book, Becoming Coachable, is truly, I think, therefore, one of the most defining books of our time. And I'm so thrilled that our listeners get to hear from you today.
Thank you so much. That's really kind.
Yeah.
We're
Wow.
thrilled to get the chance to talk about it with you.
Humbled. Thank you.
We have so much ground to cover today. So we thought we'd get started with, perhaps on a lighter note, with a game. And so we're calling this game Coachable or Not Yet. In honor of the word becoming, I think it's important that we say not yet and not just, not as a label. So what we are going to do is talk through a few of the everyday workplace situations we all face and sort of see what insights you have about it. Sounds good?
Sounds
Are
great.
you ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first situation, Leila is thrilled, right? She has this amazing idea. So she rushes to her boss, John, to talk about this idea and share what she's learned. John says, "This will never work. We've tried this before and it's failed." So is John coachable or not yet?
Yeah. Okay, I'll take that one. I think John is coachable. John, like many leaders, has misinterpreted his role in that situation. Right? He thinks as a leader, his role is to give the answer. But in fact, what great leaders do is they create space for the people who are following them, who are part of their team, to bring their own brilliance to the situation.
Right.
And here Layla has brought, this exciting idea. Whether the idea is good or bad is almost irrelevant. The fact that she is activated and engaged, it's the thing that should be encouraged. And we would hope that if John was made aware that that was actually his role, that he would become coachable.
Wonderful. And thank you for saying that the relevance of the idea is not as important as his reaction or his coachability in that particular scenario. Second one. So Emma is the CEO of this wonderful organization. Her team has called her for a presentation. And they're talking about this whole cutting edge technology that's, coming into the market. So Emma says, "I don't know much about this topic." She's growing increasingly uncomfortable with the presentation. She says, "I don't know much about this topic, but I strongly believe." Is Emma coachable or not? Or not yet?
Yeah, I think this is actually a very coachable statement because what she's admitting is that she doesn't know, right? And what you're really saying in that moment is, I'm willing to learn, right? It's okay to have strongly held beliefs or opinions, but I think that starting from a place of not knowing and asking for support is actually a highly coachable quality.
Open to change.
Yeah,
that's terrific.
Wonderful. Third one. So here is a leader called Priya, whose, team member comes to her with a really interesting idea. And so the idea is for how the team can work together more effectively and the role that Priya can play in it. And so Priya says, "Thank you for your feedback. I hadn't thought of that. Help me understand." So is Priya coachable or not yet?
Gosh, I mean, Priya sounds like she's already being coached.
Yeah.
That is such a beautiful response as a leader, to recognize, to create that space for the other person to bring, again, to bring their wisdom and knowledge and just point of view,
Yeah.
and recognize the value in it. It sounds like she's doing great.
Wonderful. Maybe a slightly different one. So
Mhm.
here is Tom, whose team member has been really hesitant to come to him with any feedback. But the whole team is struggling and they've nominated someone to go talk to Tom. And so Tom interrupts her in the middle of her statement and says, "I value your feedback, but."
Oh,
So
Mm.
is Tom
cost him $20
coachable?
right there.
Well, if Marshall Goldsmith was his coach, Marshall would fine him $20 for that.
For that, just for that, but
Yeah.
I love that.
yeah. I mean, I think we profoundly believe that anybody can become coachable. One of the first barriers, of course, to becoming coachable is a willingness to change,
Yeah.
right? And being open to making the changes that can lead to the kind of, thriving that a
Yeah.
great leader can have. And the examples that you cite of people who are, really not behaving the way we want leaders to behave
Mhm.
are people who, we hope just don't know what's possible. And with a coach, they would be
Right.
open to making that change. Of course, the other part of it, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, is being open to feedback.
Yes.
So they also have to be willing to hear the things that they're
Yeah.
doing that maybe need to be changed.
So very close. I love the first part of that statement. I value your feedback. Is that
Yeah.
the whole sentence?
Well,
That's a great
yeah.
start.
Stop there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, next one. So here is a brainstorming session that this team is going through. And, there are lots of new ideas that everyone's sort of tossing about. And Bob, who's been there for a while, says, "This is the way we've always done things here. If it ain't broke, don't fix it." Is Bob coachable or not yet?
Oh.
Not quite yet. Ready to get there.
Let's just say it's going to take a good coach to help Bob.
Yeah.
Because those, getting stuck in not willing to change, and that's what I hear when I hear someone say,
Yeah.
this is the way things have always been done,
Right.
is an expression of a lack of willing change. And the precursor to that is also recognizing things are changing,
Mm.
right? Whether you
Yeah.
like it or not, things are
Yeah.
changing. And the question you have to ask yourself as a leader in particular is, are you going to change as
Yeah.
things change, or are you going to try to resist that change for as
Yeah.
long as you can?
That's such a great point because it's also about, are you seeing yourself in the future?
Hmm.
Or are you sort of, just sort wanting to stay where you are because you're afraid of what the future holds? That's
Yeah.
a really powerful, powerful way of putting it. The last one, I think, I'm certainly guilty of, and I'm sure there are many
Yikes.
who are as well. When we talk about, do you know anyone who needs coaching? Everyone is like, yes, of course, I'll nominate my boss. I'll nominate my manager, my CEO, whoever else, right? But whenever you're asked, do you need coaching? I think people really hesitate. And I've certainly hesitated in my career. And I don't know if coaching has a branding problem. Do we have a self-awareness problem? What is it?
Oh, I think we might have a humility problem. We're so quick, and it's so easy to see
Yeah.
other people's shortcomings, and
Yeah.
it's really hard for us to look at our own. It's
Hmm.
really hard to be honest with ourselves. And that's such a funny part of writing Becoming Coachable has been how many people say, "Oh, I know someone who needs to become coachable." And the fascinating part for this in us has been that we have been looking at ourselves
Yeah.
and saying, what are the ways in which we are not totally coachable?
Right.
And trying to be honest about that and take a position of humility.
Right.
It's tough.
Right. I think
Hard
it's
work.
also a challenge of perspective.
Yeah.
The perspective that coaching is designed to fix people who are broken,
Right.
as opposed to the perspective of coaching is here to help people achieve as much growth as they can. is what I think holds people back. Because, if you said to people, do you want to grow and become the best leader you can be? I think everybody would say yes.
Yeah.
Of course I want to do that.
Right.
And if the next statement were, well, a coach is here to do that for you, that might soften it a little bit.
Right.
But certainly if you're like, you have these really bad traits, you need to get a coach.
Well,
not so much.
I also imagine, to give another example, who here wants, 6-pack abs? Everyone would be like, me, I want that. Great. But you have to go to the gym every day and you have to eat right. And most people would be like, oh.
She can have them. I'll look at them on her.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That is so well said. So the moral of the story, folks, is if you're becoming coachable for someone else, buy it for yourself first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. The game is a playful way of getting at some of the common barriers of coaching. Would love to know, in your journey of becoming coachable, what was the most challenging barrier or unlock that you faced, and how did you overcome it?
I had always thought that, I was a pretty good leader. And my teams were pretty happy and life was good. And because of that, I couldn't think of anything that I wanted to change because there wasn't anything that I wanted to change. And I would, I had sort of this, I guess in hindsight, I'd say a performative ambition to be coached. And I would talk to coaches and they'd say, well, what do you want to work on? I'd say, I don't know, things are good. They'd say, well, if you don't know what you want to work on, then I don't know how to help you. And then I found a coach who said, well, let's work on expansion and growth. And I thought, well, yeah, I'd love to grow. I'd love to understand what's beyond the limits that I think I have. I didn't even realize they were limits. And that's where coaching led me, and it's been quite a journey. So for me, just being open to change sounds like being open to change things that you want to fix.
Yeah.
But I think you could also be open to change your own self-limiting beliefs that you don't realize are limiting beliefs.
Or as you said earlier, being open to realizing that the world is changing around us, and that requires some adaptation. That in many ways, no one is standing still. So if you're not getting better, you might be getting worse.
Yeah. Enough about me. How about you?
All right. So certainly my own barrier to becoming coachable was being open to feedback. For me, feedback was not as much of a positive experience. But it was quite a process. And just think about writing a book. You're getting a lot of feedback, right? There's a lot of edits. There's a lot of red ink. And the process is one of constantly getting feedback from a lot of different early readers. And, there's so much of that process that involves feedback. And I really realized and saw the power of great input and feedback from other people. Becoming Coachable is a book that's so much better because of that feedback, because there were so many people who shared their perspectives and stories. And so that's just one example. But of course, that applies to everything in life. I realize now that we can never be truly self-aware until we start understanding the perspectives of people around us. And that's a really big part of how we continue to improve and live our fullest and best lives, because we all are doing things that get in our own way. We might not even realize it.
So, in preparing for our conversation today, I've listened to about 15 of your podcasts. And what's interesting is that every time I've sort of heard you speak about becoming coachable, there's a light. And so it seems like the message around becoming coachable is connected to your purpose somehow, and it's almost a calling. So can you talk a little bit about why it is so important for you to get this message out there?
It really is a deep calling and purpose for both of us. We really believe that leadership is one of the most powerful forces for good in the world, right? And great leaders are people who are coachable. I've had the pleasure of working for some great leaders, and I've worked for some leaders who are not quite there yet. And in either case, it's a wonderful learning and growing experience. And I think it teaches us a lot of what it is that we want to replicate in our own lives. It's so easy to just look at our own lives and think about the things that impact us, but we don't always see how big of a ripple effect our choices, our actions, and our decisions have on the people around us, especially in doing this work. And we become more and more aware of just how far reaching the impacts of leadership is. Not only do we want to help those leaders be better, but we recognize that we can go first, right? That by building a company where we live the values that we talk about, and that we try to lead with a lot of the same way that we talk about leading, I think, time will tell, but we really believe that that's the kind of impact, that those are the actions that are going to have the impact we want to have on the world.
I think we also, it's we have found our calling. It's fascinating because some people's calling is to lead. And we admire leaders and people who step up into leadership roles. We think leadership is unnatural. That I don't really think people are born leaders, good leaders. The old school leaders of like telling people what to do. There's plenty of people born to that. But the new leader who like really helps people become their fullest potential. And in so doing, I think create some of the greatest companies. Those leaders, like I have so much admiration for them. And then we know there's other people who are these great coaches who also, they may have been leaders at one point, but now choose to support leaders and help leaders become their fullest self as leaders. And we admire those people, and we're around some of the greatest of those people. I think our calling is to facilitate the best leaders connecting with the best coaches so that combination can create more better leadership in more places. We're just lucky to have sort of identified and been in the right place at the right time. Obviously working with Marshall, and the ascendancy of coaching. I think coaching is really coming into its own right now.
It's so interesting that you talk about facilitating leadership, but you're leaders yourselves, right? And the work that you've done is actually a testament to your leadership and courage. And so what I'd love to maybe talk a bit about is, could you share maybe a pivotal moment, person, experience, or influence that's helped you be the leader that you are today?
There've been a lot, but of course, the more recent one is meeting Marshall. 10 years ago, when I first met Marshall, I didn't know anything about coaching. And in hindsight, didn't know anything about leadership either. I had led my own companies, and I thought I had led them pretty well. And I had been in companies with leaders who, in hindsight, were not great leaders. And then I met Marshall, and a couple of years after I met him, maybe 18 months after, we began the creation of, first it was just going to be, 15 coaches teaching 15 people everything Marshall knew, but it became the 100 coaches community. And since then, for the last 8 years, I've been surrounded by some of the great leadership thinkers and leaders and leadership coaches in the world. Being in the context of all that thinking, obviously influenced me as a leader, but also helped us really identify leadership styles, because we can see the similarities in all the work that we're doing. And we put everything into practice into our company as well. And I think as much as anything, we see the 100 Coaches Agency as a petri dish for experimenting with leadership and leadership styles. And so far, it's really been phenomenal. The way we can support and hold our team and allow our team to be their most productive, feel as though they're in the right place in the right company doing the thing that they are destined to do, is part of the goal and ambition of what we're doing, even if it's just for a relatively short period of time. They don't have to feel like this is their life's calling. But we love it when people feel like, they're in the right place doing the right thing.
Right. Yeah. My leadership journey, there's this one really key moment in my life where everything really changed. And I had a dream. I saw myself, my life, I had died, and I was watching this video screen of my life. And I can see these scenes playing out, and I can see that I'm strong and ambitious and fast moving and determined, and I'm like just rushing around from thing to thing as fast as I can, trying to accomplish and do and climb as high as I can, as fast as I can. And the camera starts essentially zooming out, and I start seeing that there are people around me that I'm missing. Right. There's a friend who really needs support, or there's someone else who's going through a hard time. And what I start to see there is that I have actually missed the most important thing. The most important thing is not my own personal drive and ambition and accomplishing as many things as I can accomplish in the course of a lifetime. The higher purpose for life is actually to be in relationship with people and to go on the journey with others. And that was like, I remember waking up and just realizing that my life was going to be forever different. And that drastically reoriented how I thought about leadership, thought about work, how I thought about life. That it really has become this ambition of like, I only want to go there if we're all going together. Right. And I think that's ultimately what leadership is. It's not about, that the command, it's not command and control. And it's not one person saying, hey, everyone, it's this way. It's let's taking everyone on the journey together.
What's so interesting is that your dream is unfortunately, the reality for so many of us, right? And, we rarely have the time or space to reflect on what's truly important to us and how can we do more of what we love and less of perhaps what we don't. It's truly heartening that the dream was able to move you to a place where you could take action that was closer to that.
Sometimes, these are the best, the moments that people talk about when they work with a coach sometimes, where something is permanently different because they had a key insight or a realization. And those are very memorable moments. Yeah.
Well, you talked a little bit about, implementing some of the ideas from the book in your organization as well. And so could you share maybe an example or two of how, you've implemented it and what's the response or what's the feedback?
Yeah. So something we talk a lot about in our organization and with our team is flourishing. How can, we have this framework where we talk about there's a striving leader, which is someone who is focused on it, who ultimately extracts value, and they're very focused on themselves. Then there's a people-pleasing leader. Seems like they're being focused on other people, but they're still ultimately extracting value because they're really giving away their own agency. And they're usually self-sabotaging or self-sacrificing in some way. And so that's still not healthy or sustainable long-term. Then a lot of the leaders that we work with are people who are value creators. They're creating more value, not just for themselves, for their company, for their organization. So we would call those a rising leader. But of course, they still tend to be a little bit self-focused, right? It's about title, position, authority, power, money, whatever that may be. They care, about adding value, but they care most about themselves. But we think the highest ideal is what we call a flourishing leader. And this is someone who has that we-centric mind. So it's not just about me, it's about we and the collective. But they're also recognizing that they have to be expanding value. They have to be creating value for the broader world. You can't extract value and have it be sustainable long-term. So it's all about this very expansive way of living and leading. An important part of that is being in right relationship. So we need to be in right relationship with ourselves, caring for the things that we need, and not like the people pleaser, giving all that away. We need to be in right relationship with our team, with the planet, with our clients, our customers. These are all really important stakeholders in our own journeys and growth. And so we have this conversation with our team really frequently where we ask, like, how are all these different relationships going? Or do you feel like you're flourishing? Because if you're not flourishing, then none of us are flourishing. We only flourish if we are all doing so together.
Yeah. So beautifully said. And, if we go back to the game that we were playing, many of those statements sound like leaders who are either striving or rising, but, perhaps only one who is truly, flourishing at this stage, right? And so it's so interesting because it's something that's truly worth striving for, because, that's truly what self-actualization looks like in some ways. I suppose. So thank you for sharing that, Jacquelyn. This podcast is brought to you by Just Human. We offer a broad range of leadership development solutions, including mindful leadership workshops and executive coaching. To learn more, visit us at justhuman.io. And now, Back to the podcast. It's really inspiring how you both have taken your leadership impact to the next level. Certainly with the book, but as well with the 100 Coaches organization. I mean, that is truly a remarkable organization. And, Scott, you sort of were the founder of it. So you clearly have a superpower building a thriving community. You shared a bit about how that came to be, but I'd love to know what was the biggest surprise for you as you went around building the community? And perhaps, what did you learn about yourself through the journey of
Mm.
building it? And then I'd love to hear from Jacquelyn as well.
I am enormously optimistic. I believe that I can see not just the good in people, but the fullness in people. What always surprises me is no matter how big I see the potential of anybody I meet, and I try to think as big as I possibly can, I'm always surprised at how much bigger they can be. Like the
Oh, that's
potential of
amazing.
people to really rise in greatness is just enormous. Um, and I would say like the same would be true of me. Like going into 100 Coaches, I never had the expectation that we'd create, write a book or create this community. It really, I had a destination of where I thought we could go, and then just focused on the daily task of building community, and attracting the right people and helping those people become their fullest self. And so I think I probably surprised myself in how effective that was. It's like I believed it and I trusted it, but then you see the result of it, and it's
Yeah.
just extraordinary.
I love the community because we've realized there's just so much more that we can do together than we can do alone. And it's in the world of executive coaching, probably the vast majority of coaches are solo practitioners. They run their own practices and they operate independently. But it's amazing when you build a community of people and they are all sharing that same spirit of generosity and a desire to pay it forward and to make a positive impact in the world. Just what a strong, positive, powerful force that is for good.
Yeah.
And so I've been really struck by how amazing it is, not just to share time, but also to share our friends. And that's a big part of what we do is to facilitate, leaders finding the right coach, connecting other people in the community with one another. There have been some great collaborations that have come out of this, and new ideas are shared, and just more is created for everyone by seeing each other as collaborators rather than competitors.
I'm going to ask you a difficult question. So as you look back at your journey with the 100 Coaches and with the book now, what do you think is the impact that you've had in terms of the number of people you've touched through this?
Oh, wow. I don't know. We talk a lot about ripple effect.
Yes.
You put a stone in the water and you see the ripples go out. And if I just looked at the community, and I imagine there's, roughly at this point, maybe 400 people in the community. And I see, we think of the community as a mesh where each person is connected with many other people. And those connections have impacts on, thousands of people, right? Because a lot of the people who are in our community really impact a tremendous number of people. And Marshall often says, if you have like a little impact on somebody, like declare success. Because it's not that easy to have a little positive impact on people.
True.
So if we were counting little positive impacts on people, it wouldn't surprise me if there's, millions of people who have been touched by the work that we've done and the community that we've created. Not massive changes, but small changes that, these small changes create changes in their communities and their families, and that continues to ripple out. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere along that order of magnitude as well.
And we're just getting started.
I love that. I love that. And it's so wonderful to actually look back because, when you're in the thick of things, it's hard to step back and figure out the impact. But, a question like this sometimes just, helps you realize what is actually the true impact that you've had. So thank you for sharing that. It's truly remarkable work that you're leading.
Yeah. If I may also, let me just say that 8 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
nothing existed,
Right.
right? 8 years ago, we hadn't even held the first workshop. 4 years ago, the agency barely existed.
Right.
And so, one of the things that, like, reflecting back on such a great question, I don't know that we think about it that often, like the amount of change that's happened in such a short period of time, I mean, short enough to be able to really reflect back and be in awe of the transformation, is really something.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. It does really feel like the days are long, but the years are short.
Hmm.
You're taking small steps each day,
Yeah.
and it's hard to see sometimes the progress you're making until you look back and see exactly how far you've come.
Yeah. Yeah, it leads me to another question, which is that if there was someone out there listening to us right now who's trying to build, a community, what would your advice be to them to, how do they start, right? How do they go about building this community?
So here's, again, this is a big Marshall piece of wisdom. Be very careful about the first people that you bring into your community.
Mm,
The first, I'll say, 10 people that you bring into the community have an oversized impact on the culture of the community. And if
right.
you bring the right first people in, then that will attract the next level of people and will define the culture of the community. If you bring the wrong people in, and wrong people, it's not good or bad people. It's really the kind of people that create the kind of culture that you want to create with your community.
Mm,
And they come in with the right intention.
Mm.
So the selection of the first members of the community, I think, is critical.
Yeah.
great advice.
And I
Jacqueline?
think a really shared values always
Mm,
comes to mind as well, because that becomes the backbone of the community in many ways. Whether that value is generosity, paying it forward, learning, impacting, whatever population of people, those ideas are very attractive. And when people can be unified around that, it's very powerful. I think, again, the unique piece that Marshall has really done is to see people as, again, collaborators rather than
right.
competitors.
Mhm.
And so we see this, like, for
Yeah,
example, you look at YouTube creators, there was a time where they used to see one another as competitors.
right.
You're competing for views. But then a lot of them realized if we appear in one another's videos,
Right.
then essentially we're sharing our viewership, and there's more for everyone. And that same kind of effect can happen in all kinds of different areas and aspects and sectors of business and life.
Yeah.
So I do hope that there will start to become more and more communities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such great advice. One of the things that I've absolutely loved about your book is the framework of coachability.
Mm.
And, we talk about openness a lot, but I don't think I've ever seen quite the definition or the breakdown being so specific in terms of the kinds of openness that lead you to become more coachable. And so I'd love to explore that with you a bit, if I may. So let's start with openness to change.
Hmm.
One of your favorites. So let's talk about, could you share maybe a story, either yours or, someone else's, in terms of how openness to change really furthered the path to becoming coachable?
I think openness to change is step one. If you're not open to change, then there's no point in getting coaching at all, because
Right.
coaching is all about change. And as I mentioned before, my pathway to becoming coachable went through being open to change. And in my case, it was a resistance to recognizing that change doesn't mean changing things that are negative.
Hmm.
Change also means just open, growing in positive ways. That not settling for the way things are, and settling for. In fact, we had a call the other day with somebody who was looking for a coach, and he said, I got my dream job, and I'm in my dream job, and I'm thinking, I'm going to be here for the next 10 years and retire, and that's going to be great. And then he read the book, and he read about flourishing, and
Hmm.
he said, I read your book, and I decided, like, good enough is just not good enough for me.
Yeah.
And I want to have a coach because I want to become a flourishing leader, not just a good enough leader.
Mm.
And I think that is what openness to change is all about, is just recognizing that wherever you are, there's a lot more potential that can be unlocked. You know, perhaps alone, but certainly coaching is such a great modality to make that kind of thing happen.
Mm. I
Yeah.
love the way you say that because it sounds like there's no destination. It's a lifelong journey. And so you can
Hmm.
start no matter where you are at. And it doesn't actually matter where you're at
It
in many
doesn't.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
I
exactly
mean,
right.
I think that's another big revelation is
Mm.
there is no destination in life.
Right.
A number of the people in our community write books about how, people set a goal and they achieve that goal, and when they achieve the goal, they realize like that's not the destination.
Right.
And if that's really the case, then
Yeah.
maybe setting a goal to achieve the goal isn't the best way forward.
Oh, that's profound.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to ask you the opposite, right? So if you had to describe a leader who's not open to change yet, right? And do you have a story perhaps, about what that might look like?
It often manifests as some of the statements that we played in our game earlier today,
Hmm.
uh, where someone just makes it pretty clear that I think of one leader we spoke with, and he said, "Oh, I'm not actually interested in changing. I would just like the perception of me to change."
Yeah.
And I thought that was a very funny statement.
Oh
He's
my
like, a coach,
goodness.
essentially what a coach is going to do is run a PR campaign for me and tell all my stakeholders that I'm not the problem.
Yeah.
And we chuckled a little bit and said, you may not be ready for coaching yet. You
Right.
may not be open to change. The reality is, if you can't
Oh,
ask other people to change, if you are not willing to do so
yeah,
yourself, or at least it will ring hollow.
Mm.
that's such
I
a great
think I think a
example.
lot of time also people are, in fairness to them, life's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And they're in a role and they're struggling to keep up with the role
Yes.
and the tasks of the role, and they just can't even imagine anything that they can change. And they're stuck. And I have a lot of empathy for those kind of people. Coaching would help them
Mm.
if they could see their way to accepting help.
I think of the example of my parents in the medical field, and my parents deliver, medical diagnoses all the time, right? Like you've got to stop smoking, or you've got, some lifestyle change is going to be important, or
Right.
else this may become a chronic issue, right? You're going to have that surgery again, or you're going
Yeah.
to be sick again until you make a change. And it's amazing how some people hear that and they realize I am going to make a change, and they
Yeah.
completely turn their lives around. And some people hear that feedback and say, "Oh, okay, great. I'll see you again," or whatever.
Mhm.
So true. So the second one in your book is openness to feedback. And we talked a bit about that, but I'd love to know if you have a story here that you'd like to share.
Jacquelyn?
Think of one woman who was pretty resistant to feedback,
Mhm.
and she thought it was very unfair. She's been
Ah,
mischaracterized or misjudged, and so it was that she was always defensive and explaining away some of the things that she was hearing from other people
right.
at her organization. She began working with a coach, and that coach helped her to go through the process of becoming open to feedback. And a lot of the advice was just bite your tongue. When someone is giving you feedback, just listen. And
Yeah.
then at the end, say thank you and nothing else. Don't get
Yeah.
defensive. Don't explain it. That's it. And
Mm.
so she really, really practiced this. And finally, she's working with one of her direct reports, who they have a little bit of tension between them. And she's giving some feedback. And, this woman again just like bites her tongue and like musters out a thank you.
Right.
And almost like runs away from the meeting so that she doesn't accidentally say something else. But the amazing thing is that after a while, they started to, a relationship that had some tension
Mm.
started to soften, and they started to have a great working relationship. And she began
Right.
to see the wisdom in her direct reports' feedback and
Yeah.
started to really value her input and perspective, even though
Yeah.
it was very different from her own. And the amazing thing is that this relationship shifted from one of tension to one of great collaboration, so much so that the two of them ultimately decided to leave that company and start a business together.
Yeah. That is such a great story. It's so interesting because feedback is one of the hardest ones, right? I mean, if feedback is a gift, why does everyone hate it so much? Right?
Yeah.
Because, and for me, I think reading Marshall's book really, and, reading about feed forward truly changed how I looked at receiving feedback, but also how I started helping my team members very, very differently than perhaps I had in the past. And so
Mhm.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about feed forward.
What I love about feed forward is just the slight change in wording
Mm.
really changes the feeling of it.
Yeah.
So feedback, as Marshall would tell you, is tends to have a backward looking view
Yeah.
and saying, here's the thing you did wrong in the past,
Yeah.
right? Which is not, sometimes if someone says, I don't like the way you did that, is actually not very helpful moving forward. So Marshall's framing of feed forward is, instead of saying, here's what you did wrong in the past, here's what you could do differently in the future or better in the future. And it actually makes it very actionable. Right? It turns something like you don't call enough to, in the future, I would like if you called more.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
Just a simple example.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen that unlock, the potential, right? And truly help my team members blossom as well. The third one that you have is openness to taking action. This one surprised me because I was like, okay, if you're open to change, you're open to feedback, surely you're taking action, right?
Yeah, I agree. Surely you should be. But the reality is, someone can go in and say, like, I want to change, and I'll listen to feedback, but then they don't implement it.
Right.
And again, like we're looking at creating impact and having coaching really transform not just the lives of the leader, but the people who report to the leader and the entire
Right.
organization, their family, et cetera. And just being aware of what you need to change, both through your own reflection and through other people, is not enough. Taking that action and really putting it into practice is critical.
Yeah, it's not easy to take action when we all have so many
Yeah.
competing
Sure.
priorities, right? I mean, leaders are very busy people, and yet it's a really important piece of the process, because if you only talk about making change and hear the feedback and say thank you, and so you're receptive of the feedback, but nothing ever gets put into action, nothing ever changes, it still will ultimately erode some of that trust and some of the respect of the people that you're working with and the people that you're leading. And so action is a really important
I think
part.
also, now that I don't know if I've thought of this before, but I think taking action is also proof that you're making the change,
Mm.
right? Like the change
Right.
isn't really change until you put it into action.
Right.
And the feedback, just listening to feedback and not doing anything with it is eventually going to be hollow unless you actually take action. And so I think, we do, it's true. We also think that taking action should be obvious. But I think that it is a critical part of the framework.
Mm. And in all the leaders that you've coached, and certainly in your own journeys, right? Do you have a story perhaps about how the openness to taking action either helped or didn't, right, in a particular context?
I'm thinking of one leader who I would almost describe it as like analysis paralysis, just kept hearing lots of feedback and getting
Right.
lots of ideas and having all these conversations. But he ultimately felt almost overwhelmed or paralyzed in a way, and didn't know how to take action. Again, I think a great coach can help with that and help get very clear on pick one thing.
It's a great example of this is, and we tell the story in our book, the story of Hubert Joly at Best Buy, who, he came into Best Buy and the category was just tanking. Like the other competitors had gone bankrupt, and the analysts thought that Best Buy was going to be next. And he came in, and the first thing he realized is he didn't have the answers.
Right.
So he knew that something had to change at Best Buy. So he went out and he went to the frontline stores, and he said, my name is Hubert Joly. I'm the CEO of Best Buy, and I need help. And so he solicited the feedback from the frontline workers to tell him what needed to change
Right.
at Best Buy. And then he put it into action, right? That he didn't just, take that thing and then still go with his ideas, put into action. And it was putting it into action that really turned the company around and saved the company, now thriving company.
Such a great story. I think both of them. And, there's so much to unpack there because in Jacquelyn, what you said, we often assume that people don't take action because they don't want to. And what you said is actually quite different because, that assumption is not a correct assumption at all because sometimes people just need help because of the overwhelm from where do I start? Right. And so having a coach can truly help you start to take small, small risks, small experiments that can lead you down the path of taking the final bigger actions. And so that's such a powerful lesson. And, certainly with Scott, what you said, I think, Hubert Jolie's example, it's absolutely fantastic in terms of how, because the fact is answers lie with our people most of the time. And so the fact that he was willing to listen and then take action based on what he heard is truly, I think, set him up for success in that role and certainly help Best Buy as well. Right. And so thank you for sharing both of those. The last one, of course, is I think the most challenging as well, which is openness to accountability. I think that's the one that I think many of us struggle with as well. So tell us a story about accountability.
Yeah, I think what makes accountability hard is that it's an ongoing process. Some of these other ones feel like they can take a little bit less time, but accountability is about repetition and putting in the work.
Accountability is forever.
It's forever. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Listen, and I'll just like give the example from my own life because I, like many people would make a New Year's resolution. I'd say, this is the year I'm going to get in better shape and I'm going to exercise more and go to the gym. But it wasn't until I hired a personal trainer one year that I actually started going at least twice a week because I was paying for it, whether I showed up or not. And so that accountability and he would text me if I missed a week, it's not like he didn't know. He was telling me and encouraging me to come back. And so it was that accountability that got me to the gym regularly. And then, after a while, I thought, I built some new good habits. It's been a year. I'm solid. I can go on my own now. And that lasted, a little while. I did okay for a bit, but then, not much time had passed and I was not going to the gym nearly as much as I had aspired to. And then I realized I actually need accountability from another person, period. It's just the first thing to go unless I have some kind of accountability in my life. So fortunately, my husband has much better exercise habits than I do. And he's my accountability partner. And pretty much to this day, I pretty much don't go to the gym unless he is also going with me. And so just the accountability of sitting down with my husband every week and deciding what days are we going to go to the gym, at what time, is the thing that gets me to go. I'm very grateful for it. But we all need, there's things in all of our lives that we don't like to do. We put it off. Maybe it's a hard conversation or making a big decision. But sometimes just having someone who asks us and checks in with us, how are you doing? Have you had that conversation yet? Are you putting into practice that new behavior you've been talking about? Sometimes it's what we need.
So many more questions. So I thought we would put some of it together in a rapid fire.
Perfect.
So are you ready?
Let's
ready. Hands on the buzzer.
So the first one, what's the biggest myth about coaching?
I think the big myth is that a coach needs to have walked in your shoes.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Good one.
People say that all the time. I want a coach who's been in my role, who's done what I've done. And, there are times where that coach is a good coach. But I think there's also a lot of times where that was good for them at that time in that role, in that company, and may or may not translate to what you're doing.
Yeah.
So we're always very cautious about that. We always present three coaches to people. So if they ask, one of the three will be that. But I think that the person looking for a coach realizes that that is not really one of the criteria.
And there's a big difference between giving advice and coaching, which, is part of
Yeah,
alluding to as well.
absolutely.
Great answer. Next one. Who's your favorite coach ever?
Well, we can't
Well,
not say
everybody's favorite coach ever is Marshall.
Goldsmith. That's an easy one.
He's
He's the best.
when he's working with somebody, the kind of transformation he creates, the time and the short time frame it happens in, and really the profoundness of the transformation.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, there's a lot of great coaches out there.
Yeah.
But he's special.
He knows how to say the right thing at the right moment.
Yeah.
He-
And
With the right amount of
Right.
directness.
what is one failure that you're proud of or that's paved the way for your success?
I don't know why your question like brought this answer up at this moment, but I've never thought about this as one of my biggest failures. But one of the things that I thought was one of my biggest successes was also one of my biggest failures,
Wow.
and I think became one of my biggest teachers. And that was, without giving away too much, I worked on a major project for a major company for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the project, really came up with a solution that was magnificent and transformed the company. But I was unaware of the politics of what I was doing
Right.
all along the way. And so even though I had had this great success for me and for the company, it led to me getting fired, not because I had done anything wrong, but because I had not included enough of the people who needed to be included.
Right.
And I think I realized it took me, it was well into my career, by the way, by the time I figured this out, that doing the work itself wasn't the entirety of the work.
Right.
And that was critical to make sure that all of the other people, and by the way, it wasn't even my direct reports that needed to be brought along. It was other senior people within the organization.
Stakeholders. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had just neglected to do that. It was a
Yeah.
really tough and painful lesson, but it was an important one.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Great story. And certainly the learnings from it have, held you in good stead as you've gone on to build this amazing organization and write this book that is having such an impact across the globe. Next question. We all think we're awesome. Why do we need a coach?
Because we can all get better. That's for sure.
Love that answer.
Yeah.
And there's, I mean, for me personally, there's nothing that's been more accelerating than finding the support I need when I need it.
Yeah.
Especially if for someone who might feel like they're stuck or spinning their wheels, or just know that there can be more for them. Those might be good indications that it's time to look for a coach.
Yeah.
Right. Also, everybody, no matter how amazing somebody is, they all have blind spots. I mean, we just don't have the ability to see ourselves. In the world of branding, we always say the gem can't read the label on the jar. Like you're inside your world, your world from the inside so well that you really can't tell how people perceive you from the outside.
True.
And a coach is really best suited to help you understand that. And in understanding that, you can just be that much more effective.
Such great answers, both. Next one. What's a book that's been life-changing for you?
My favorite right now has been David Brooks' new book, How to Know a Person. It's such a beautiful book. I think it's one of the most important books written in the last year. Lots of great actionable insight about how to really see others deeply and be deeply seen yourself. And that just makes all of life better.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I feel so strongly about that. I agree. I think that understanding people is the most important skill of our time.
Yeah.
And so I would double down on that and say like that's the book.
Yeah. And it's key to humanizing leadership, which we talk about as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
If.
Or what is your superpower? I guess
Um,
I should reframe.
Yeah, I think I just love seeing people, seeing what makes them special, and seeing ways that people can collaborate, making connections between people, and yeah.
yeah. I think seeing the best in people is your superpower and a great superpower. Because I think it really helps illuminate people and help them see themselves in that same light. Um, I think I have a complementary skill of curation,
Mm,
is understanding how people fit together,
mm,
and how people fit with the world, and creating those matches is also it's a superpower we both deploy. And it's just so rewarding, especially in like the coach matching, when a great coach is matched with the right leader, and you just see like
yeah,
really exponential transformation that happens. It feels like a superpower.
yeah. Oh, that's very cool. What's one piece of career advice that has helped you in your career? And what's one piece of career advice you want to share with our listeners today?
Some of the best career advice I received was be patient.
Mm,
Love it.
wow.
Shocking as that may sound, it completely changed my life. Really.
So a lot of people, my son is changing careers right now. So I'm thinking about this a lot. And a lot of people say, follow your passion. And that is a frustrating and I think a little bit
Yes.
misguided thing, because, we have a lot of passions, but passions don't make careers. Um, but I think underneath that could be the advice of stay true to yourself,
Mm,
right? So don't take a job or a role that isn't a good fit for you, or doesn't feel right for you, or doesn't have the same values that you have.
right.
Because I think that, ultimately that does not end up flourishing. It ends up diminishing.
Mm,
So I think that staying true to yourself is critical.
yeah. If Becoming Coachable was a movie, which movie would it be? And what would be the theme song?
Okay.
This is on you.
Yeah. So I think it would be the Karate Kid. Would be the
Oh,
right,
I like
Oh,
that.
right,
I
right.
love
Yeah.
that.
Wow. That's really going into the archives.
Yeah.
But yeah, good
It would
call.
be the Karate Kid. We would, you do the exercises, you don't exactly know why, and then it
Yeah.
all makes sense and
Love it.
comes into play, right?
Oh, what
That
a
for
great
sure.
one.
And
Yeah.
I think the song that comes to mind immediately is the Beatles song "Help." Help, I need somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it,
I thought
love
you would
it,
have gone with
love it.
Magic by Coldplay.
I mean, I love
That
that
seems
song.
to be a theme
I
song
love
for
that
us. Yeah.
Amazing. Great
Yeah.
answers. Um, is there a question that I should have asked you but haven't?
Hmm.
Gosh. Feels pretty comprehensive to me.
Yeah.
You could have asked, but I think you already did ask, is coaching for everybody?
Hmm.
Um, and I think our answer, the sort of easy answer is yes, coaching's for everybody. But I think the real answer is leadership coaching is really for people who have an ambition for more,
Hmm.
for who have an ambition for growth, and have an opportunity to actually grow and be more. We often say that we're focused on value creating leaders at moments of inflection.
Hmm.
So people who have a responsibility to create growth for themselves, the people around them, um, and have the opportunity to actually do something about it. We think that's really the time to think about a coach.
Hmm. Wonderful.
Hmm.
So, thank you so much, Jacquelyn and Scott, for sharing your wisdom with our listeners today. Could you share a little bit about how they can find you and follow you?
Yes. Well, certainly you can find the 100 Coaches Agency at 100coachesagency.com. That's 100
Yeah.
coachesagency.com. You can also find more about our book, Becoming Coachable, at becomingcoachable.com. We're also both on LinkedIn, Scott Osman and Jacquelyn Lane. Scott has a wonderful weekly newsletter that you can subscribe to on LinkedIn, where you can hear all of his latest thoughts and insights.
Follow my life. It's great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with our listeners today.
Thanks,
Thank you
Shahana.
so
So
much
great
for
being with
doing
you.
this. This was a really fun conversation. Looking forward to more.
Thank you for joining us. We'd love to hear from you. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Mindful Leadership Podcast brought to you by Just Human. We are a growth accelerator for our clients, helping your people and businesses thrive through human-centered, ecosystem-based people solutions. To learn more, visit us at justhuman.io and schedule a 30-minute free call with us.